Tiho had been awake for 22 hours. His eyes burned. His back hurt. His coffee had gone cold 3 hours ago, and he had forgotten to eat dinner. None of this mattered to the ship's computer, which kept sending him from one broken system to another like he was the only engineer on the entire vessel. He was not the only engineer, but he was the only one stupid enough to answer emergency calls at 3 in the morning. The Horizon's Edge was a diplomatic ship, one of humanity's finest. It carried ambassadors, politicians, and important people who wore expensive clothes and spoke in careful words. Tiho fixed their toilets, repaired their air systems, and made sure the lights turned on when they pressed the switch. Nobody thanked him for this. Nobody even knew his name. Tonight, the environmental controls on Deck 7 had failed. The temperature had dropped to freezing in the ambassador's quarters, and someone very important was very unhappy. Tiho had spent 4 hours crawling through maintenance tunnels, replacing broken parts with tired hands. Now the ship's computer was sending him somewhere new, another problem, another repair. He followed the directions on his tablet without really looking, his feet moving automatically through the empty hallways. The ship was quiet at this hour. Most people were sleeping. The lights had dimmed to save power, casting long shadows across the metal floors. Tiho walked past doors he had never seen before, through corridors he did not recognize. He should have noticed that the walls had changed. They were no longer plain metal but covered in strange blue patterns that seemed to glow softly. He should have noticed that the air smelled different here, like flowers and something electric. He should have noticed the warning signs written in a language he could not read. But Tiho was tired, so very tired. His tablet beeped. Destination reached, the computer announced. Maintenance access point located. Tiho looked at the door in front of him. It was tall and decorated with silver designs, not a normal maintenance door. But the computer said this was the place, and he trusted the computer. He pressed his hand against the panel. The door slid open. Steam poured out, warm and thick. Tiho blinked, confused. This was not a maintenance room. This was a bathroom. A very large, very fancy bathroom with a pool in the center that glowed with soft blue light. And standing in that pool was a woman. No, not a woman, something else. Her skin was silver like polished metal, and it shimmered in the steam. Her hair was white and floated around her shoulders like silk in water. Her eyes were large and purple, and they were staring directly at him. She was completely naked. Tiho's brain stopped working. His mouth opened, but no words came out. His feet refused to move. He stood there, frozen, staring at this impossible creature while steam swirled around them both. The woman did not scream. She did not cover herself. She did not move at all. She simply stared at him with those huge purple eyes, and her mouth fell open in what could only be described as total shock. They stood like that for what felt like hours. In reality, it was probably 5 seconds. "I am so sorry," Tiho finally managed to say. His voice came out as a whisper. "Wrong door, very wrong door, I will leave now." He tried to step backward, but his legs had become useless. He stumbled, caught himself on the doorframe, and nearly fell into the hallway. His face burned with embarrassment. His heart pounded in his chest. The woman still had not moved. She was staring at him like he was a ghost, like he was something impossible that should not exist. "I am leaving," Tiho repeated, finally finding his feet. "Very sorry, so sorry." He turned and ran. He made it exactly 12 steps before the guards appeared. They came from nowhere, tall figures in silver armor that matched the woman's skin. Their weapons pointed at his chest, glowing with dangerous energy. Tiho raised his hands immediately, his repair tablet clattering to the floor. "Do not move, creature," one of the guards commanded. His voice was deep and cold. "I was not trying to do anything wrong," Tiho said quickly. "The computer sent me here. It was a mistake. I did not mean to see anything." The guards did not seem to care about his explanation. They grabbed his arms and pushed him against the wall. One of them spoke into a device on his wrist, saying words in a language Tiho did not understand. The response came immediately, fast and angry. More guards arrived, then more. Within minutes, Tiho was surrounded by at least 20 armed soldiers, all of them staring at him like he had committed the worst crime in the universe. "What is happening?" Tiho asked. "I am just an engineer, I fix things. I did not mean to walk in on anyone." Nobody answered him. They put restraints on his wrists and led him through the strange corridors. Tiho saw more of the blue patterns on the walls, more doors decorated with silver. This was not the human section of the ship. This was somewhere else entirely. The diplomatic quarters, the alien section. He had walked in on an alien. A naked alien. This was bad. This was very, very bad. They threw him into a small room with no windows and only one door. The walls were smooth and cold. There was no chair, no bed, nothing but empty space and silence. Tiho sat on the floor and put his head in his hands. His career was over. His life was probably over. He had accidentally invaded the privacy of some alien diplomat, and now he would be executed or imprisoned or sent to some horrible planet where humans were not welcome. All because he was too tired to read a warning sign. Hours passed, or maybe it was minutes. Tiho could not tell. He sat in the dark room thinking about all the choices that had led him to this moment. He thought about his parents back on Earth, who had been so proud when he joined the space program. He thought about his sister, who had laughed and called him a hero. Some hero. He could not even find the right door. Finally, the door opened. A tall alien stepped inside. He was male, with silver skin like the woman but darker, almost gray. His face was hard and unfriendly. He wore armor that was more decorated than the guards, covered in symbols that probably meant something important. "I am Commander Voran," the alien said. His voice was like ice. "You will tell me why you attempted to assassinate the princess." Tiho blinked. "The what?" "Do not play foolish, human. You entered the private chambers of Princess Lyra, third heir to the Valen stellar throne. This is an act of war." Tiho's stomach dropped. Princess. He had walked in on a princess, a naked alien princess. "I did not try to assassinate anyone," he said, his voice shaking. "I am a maintenance engineer. The ship's computer gave me wrong directions. I thought I was going to fix a broken machine." Commander Voran studied him with cold eyes. He did not seem to believe a single word. "The computer does not make mistakes," Voran said. "Well, it did tonight," Tiho replied. "Because I definitely did not plan to walk into anyone's bathroom. I just wanted to do my job and go to sleep." The commander stepped closer. He was very tall, almost 2 meters, and he looked down at Tiho like a giant studying an insect. "You are lying," Voran said. "All humans lie." "I am not lying. I have no reason to hurt your princess. I did not even know she existed until 10 minutes ago." Voran's eyes narrowed. "We shall see. The interrogation will determine the truth." He turned and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he looked back at Tiho one more time. "If you are guilty," Voran said, "you will wish you had never been born." The door closed, and Tiho was alone again. He let out a long breath and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere on this ship, a princess was probably very angry at him. Somewhere, diplomats were arguing about what to do with the stupid human who did not know how to read signs. And somewhere, Tiho knew, his friend Yuna was probably trying to help him. She worked in communications. She heard everything. She would know he was in trouble. He just hoped she could reach him before the aliens decided he was guilty. In the dark room, Tiho closed his eyes and waited. He had no idea that his accidental mistake was about to change everything, not just for him, but for all of humanity. Because the princess had noticed something when she saw him, something impossible, something that was already spreading through the alien ship like fire through dry grass. The human was warm. The interrogation room was colder than the cell. Metal walls surrounded Tiho on all sides, smooth and gray, with strange lights that moved across the ceiling like searching eyes. Commander Vorin sat across from him, a table between them that seemed to be made of solid crystal. Tiho had been sitting here for 3 hours. His back hurt, his wrists were still in restraints, and Vorin had asked him the same questions over and over again, never seeming satisfied with the answers. "Tell me again," Vorin said, his voice flat. "How did you enter the diplomatic section?" "The ship's computer gave me directions," Tiho repeated for the 20th time. "I was fixing the environmental systems on Deck 7. When I finished, the computer told me there was another problem. I followed the path on my tablet. The door opened when I touched it. The doors in the diplomatic section do not open for humans." "Well, that one did." Vorin's purple eyes studied Tiho carefully. The Valen commander had a way of looking at people that made them feel like they were being taken apart piece by piece. Tiho tried not to show fear, but it was difficult. "Your heart rate remains steady," Vorin observed. "Your breathing is calm. Either you are telling the truth or you are a highly trained liar." "I am an engineer," Tiho said. "I fix broken things. I do not know how to lie in a trained way. I am just tired and scared and very confused about why everyone thinks I am an assassin." Vorin leaned back in his chair. His silver armor caught the moving lights, making him look like a statue that had come to life. "Do you know what the princess is to my people?" "A princess," Tiho guessed. "She is sacred," Vorin said. "The royal family carries a gift that separates them from common Valen. They are warm-blooded. They generate heat within their bodies. To us, this is the mark of divinity. The gods themselves bless their bloodline." Tiho blinked. "Warm-blooded, that is the special thing." "You speak as if it is nothing." "I mean no disrespect," Tiho said quickly. "But on my world, almost all animals are warm-blooded. Humans, dogs, cats, birds, it is very common." Vorin went completely still. His purple eyes widened slightly, and for the first time since the interrogation began, he looked surprised. "You are saying that all humans generate internal heat?" "Yes, is that strange?" The commander did not answer. He stood up suddenly and walked to the door, speaking into his wrist device in the Valen language. Tiho could not understand the words, but he could hear the urgency in Vorin's voice. Something had changed. Minutes passed. Vorin paced back and forth across the room, occasionally stopping to stare at Tiho like he was a puzzle that needed solving. Then the door opened, and 2 Valen scientists entered. They wore white robes instead of armor, and they carried strange devices that hummed with soft energy. "Scan him," Vorin commanded. The scientists approached Tiho carefully, like he was a dangerous animal. One of them pointed a device at his chest, and it made a series of beeping sounds. The scientist's face went pale. "Commander," she whispered, "he is radiating heat. His internal temperature it is above 40 of our standard units. This is impossible." "Is he sick?" Vorin asked. "No, sir. This appears to be normal for his species. His body produces heat constantly, like a living furnace." Vorin turned to look at Tiho with new eyes. There was no anger in his expression now. There was something else, something that looked almost like fear. "Leave us," he told the scientists. They hurried out of the room, glancing back at Tiho as they went. When they were alone again, Vorin sat down slowly. His movements were careful, like a man who had just received shocking news. "Do you understand what this means?" he asked. "Not really," Tiho admitted. "I am just a normal human. There is nothing special about me." "Every human is warm-blooded." "Yes. Every single one, not just your leaders, not just your priests." "We do not have priests that are different from other people," Tiho said. "Everyone is the same. Well, not exactly the same. Some people are taller or shorter or smarter or dumber, but we all make heat. It is just how bodies work. Vorin put his head in his hands. It was a strangely human gesture, one that Tiho recognized from his own moments of stress. The commander was struggling with something big. For 10,000 years, Vorin said quietly, the Valen people have been ruled by those who carry the sacred warmth. Our entire civilization is built on the belief that warm-blooded beings are chosen by the gods. Only 1 in 10,000 Valen is born with this gift. They become our royalty, our religious leaders, our judges of right and wrong. He looked up at Tiho. And now you are telling me that humanity, your entire species, carries this same gift, that billions of you walk around generating heat like it means nothing. It does not mean anything to us, Tiho said. It is just biology, the way we are made. This will break everything, Vorin whispered. This knowledge will tear the Empire apart. Meanwhile, in another part of the ship, Yuna was having her own difficult conversation. She stood in the communications center, surrounded by screens and blinking lights, arguing with the ship's captain about her friend's situation. Tiho would never hurt anyone, she insisted. He is the kindest person I know. He feeds stray cats on the station. He remembers everyone's birthday. He is not an assassin. Captain Park, a stern woman with gray hair and tired eyes, shook her head. I believe you, Yuna, but the Valen are convinced he tried to attack their princess. They want to execute him as an enemy combatant. On what evidence? He walked through the wrong door. The doors in their section are supposed to be locked to human access, Captain Park explained. They think someone gave him the codes. They think it was planned. Yuna's mind raced. The ship's computer rerouted him. I can check the logs. There has to be a record of where he was sent and why. Do it quickly, Captain Park said. We have maybe 12 hours before the Valen Council makes their decision. After that, there is nothing I can do. Yuna ran to her station and began pulling up records. Her fingers flew across the console, searching through data from the last 24 hours. She found Tiho's work orders. She found his path through the ship, and she found something strange. The computer had definitely rerouted him, but the order to reroute did not come from normal maintenance protocols. It came from the diplomatic section itself. Someone on the Valen side had opened that door. Captain, Yuna called out, you need to see this. As Yuna worked to prove Tiho's innocence, Princess Lyra was having a crisis of her own. She sat in her private quarters, wrapped in silk robes, staring at the recording of the moment when the human had entered her bathing chamber. She had watched it 50 times. Each time, she noticed something new. The way he had frozen in surprise. The way his face had turned red from blood rushing to his skin, something only warm-blooded creatures could do. The way he had tried to look away, to respect her privacy, even in his confusion. He had bowed his head. In Valen culture, that was a gesture of deep respect. Only those who recognized sacred status would bow. But humans did not know Valen customs, so why had he bowed? Because he was embarrassed, Lyra whispered to herself. He was ashamed to have seen me. He wanted to show he meant no harm. A knock came at her door. Enter, she said. Her advisor, an elderly Valen named Sora, stepped inside. Her silver hair was pulled back tightly, and her expression was troubled. Princess, the council is gathering. They wish to discuss the human. What is there to discuss? He made a mistake, let him go. Sora hesitated. It is not that simple anymore. The scientists have examined him. They say he is warm-blooded, not just him, all humans. The council is in chaos. Lyra stood up slowly, all of them. Yes, Princess, an entire species of sacred beings. The implications are, they are too large to understand. Lyra walked to her window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere among those distant lights was Earth, the human homeworld. A planet with billions of people, all of them carrying the warmth that her people considered divine. "Bring the human to me," she said. "Princess, that is not appropriate. The council—" "I am third heir to the throne," Lyra interrupted. "I have the right to speak with anyone I choose. Bring him to me. I wish to understand." Sora bowed and left to carry out the order. Lyra continued staring at the stars, her mind full of questions. Who were these humans really? Why did they not know their own power? And why had the universe allowed such creatures to exist without telling anyone? The answers, she knew, would change everything. The guards brought Tiho to a room that looked nothing like his cold cell. Soft lights glowed from the walls. Blue flowers grew in crystal vases. The floor was covered in something that felt like silk under his tired feet. Princess Lyra sat on a low chair near the window, her silver skin catching the starlight from outside. She wore simple robes now, dark blue with silver edges, and her white hair was pulled back from her face. She looked different from what Tiho remembered. Calmer, more curious than angry. "Leave us," she said to the guards. Commander Vorin stepped forward. "Princess, I cannot allow you to be alone with—" "Vorin," her voice was soft but carried a weight that stopped the commander mid-sentence. "I am not asking. Leave us." The guards retreated and the door closed behind them. Tiho stood awkwardly in the center of the room, unsure what to do with his hands. His restraints had been removed, but he still felt like a prisoner. "Please sit," Lyra said, gesturing to a chair across from her. Tiho sat. The chair was surprisingly comfortable, designed for bodies that were shaped differently from his own but still pleasant enough. He tried not to stare at the princess, but it was difficult. She was the strangest and most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "I want to apologize," he said quickly. "For earlier, I did not mean to see. I mean, I should not have been there. It was an accident." Lyra tilted her head slightly, studying him. "You are sorry." "Very sorry, extremely sorry." "Why?" The question confused him. "Because it is wrong to invade someone's privacy, because you were not dressed, because I embarrassed you." "I was not embarrassed," Lyra said. "You were not." "No, I was shocked. There is a difference." She leaned forward slightly. "Do you know why I was shocked?" Tiho thought about it. "Because a stranger walked into your bathroom." "Because I felt your heat." He did not understand. "My heat." "When you stood in the doorway, I could feel warmth coming from your body. It reached across the room like sunlight. I have only ever felt that from my own family, from the sacred bloodline. And suddenly, a human, a creature we were taught was cold and primitive, was radiating heat like a small star." Tiho looked down at his hands. They seemed normal to him, ordinary. "I do not feel like a star." "No," Lyra agreed. "And that is perhaps the most confusing part. You genuinely do not understand what you are." She stood up and walked closer to him. Tiho tensed, unsure if he should stand as well, unsure of the protocol for meeting alien royalty in a private room. "May I?" Lyra asked, holding out her hand toward him. "May you what?" "Touch you, just your hand. I want to feel it again." This was strange. This was very strange. But Tiho could not think of a reason to refuse, so he nodded and held out his hand. Lyra's fingers brushed against his palm. Her skin was cool, like smooth metal that had been sitting in shade. The moment they made contact, her purple eyes widened, and she inhaled sharply. "It is real," she whispered. "You are so warm." "You are cold," Tiho observed. "Are you feeling okay? On my world, if someone is this cold, they might be sick." Lyra pulled her hand back and actually laughed. It was a small sound, surprised and genuine, and it changed her whole face. "I am perfectly healthy. My temperature is normal for a common Valen, but I am not common. I am warm-blooded, which is why I can feel the difference so clearly." She returned to her seat, still smiling slightly. "Tell me about humans. Tell me about your world." Tiho was not sure where to begin. "What do you want to know?" "Everything, but start with this. Why do you not worship yourselves? Worship ourselves. Your entire species is warm-blooded. In our culture, that would make you all gods. You would rule the galaxy. You would demand tribute and obedience from every cold-blooded race. But instead, you are here fixing machines on a diplomatic ship. Why? Tiho scratched his head, thinking about how to explain something he had never considered before. We do not think being warm-blooded is special. It is just normal, like having two eyes or needing to breathe air. We do not worship ourselves for having bodies. But you must have some sense of superiority, some knowledge that you are different. We feel superior to some things, Tiho admitted. We think we are smarter than animals. We are proud of our technology and our art. But we also fight with each other constantly. We argue about everything. If you told a human that they were divine, they would probably laugh and then go back to complaining about their job. Lyra shook her head slowly. This is impossible to understand. May I ask you something? Tiho said. Yes. Why does being warm-blooded matter so much to your people? Lyra was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. Long ago, the Valen were a simple species, cold-blooded like most life in the galaxy. We lived in caves and fought over scraps of food. Then one day, a child was born who was different. She radiated heat. She could survive in cold places that killed others. She could think more clearly, move more quickly, make better decisions. She became our first queen. She looked out the window at the stars. Over thousands of years, her bloodline spread. But the warm blood trait remained rare, 1 in 10,000 births. Those who carried it were always the leaders, the priests, the judges. We built temples to them. We wrote laws that protected them. We created an entire civilization around the belief that warmth was sacred. And now you have met us, Tiho said softly. A species where everyone has what you consider divine. Yes, Lyra turned back to face him. Do you see the problem? If warmth is common, then it is not special. If it is not special, then our entire system of government, our religion, our culture, it is all based on a lie. It is not a lie, Tiho said. It is just different. Your warm-blooded people are still special to you. They still led your civilization for thousands of years. That does not become less true just because humans exist. Lyra considered this. You are surprisingly wise for a maintenance engineer. I am not wise. I am just trying not to cause an interstellar incident. She laughed again, that same surprised sound. You are also surprisingly honest. Lying would only make things worse, Tiho said, and I am already in enough trouble. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. The stars drifted slowly past the window. Somewhere on the ship, Tiho knew important people were arguing about his fate. But in this room with this strange princess, he felt almost peaceful. I do not believe you are an assassin, Lyra said finally. Thank you. But the council may not agree. They are frightened by what you represent. Some of them will want to destroy all humans before your existence becomes widely known. Others will want to worship you. Neither option is good. I would prefer option 3, Tiho said. The one where everyone just leaves each other alone and I go back to fixing air conditioners. Unfortunately, that is not possible anymore. You have already changed things by being here, by being what you are. Lyra stood up and walked toward the door. I will speak to the council on your behalf. I will try to make them understand that you meant no harm. Will they listen to you? They might. I am third heir, which means I have some freedom to speak my mind. My older siblings must be careful with every word, but I can say things they cannot. She paused at the door. There is one thing I want you to remember, Tiho of Earth. What is that? You think you are ordinary. You think you are just an engineer who fixes things. But what is ordinary to you is extraordinary to others. Never forget that your normal might be someone else's miracle. She opened the door, and the guards immediately appeared. Return him to his quarters, Lyra ordered. Not the cell. Find him a proper room with a bed and food. He is a guest now, not a prisoner. Commander Vorin looked like he wanted to argue, but he said nothing. The guards led Tiho away, and he looked back over his shoulder to see Princess Lyra watching him go. She raised one silver hand in a small wave. Tiho smiled and nodded back. Then the door closed, and they were separated once again. But something had changed. Something important had passed between them, an understanding, a connection, a first fragile step toward something neither of them could name. And somewhere in the ship, Yuna was still working to prove his innocence, digging through computer records and finding secrets that would soon bring everything to light. The story was far from over. The High Council chamber was the largest room Tiho had ever seen. Crystal pillars rose toward a ceiling that seemed to stretch into infinity, each one filled with swirling blue light. Hundreds of Valen sat in elevated seats that circled the central floor, their silver faces turned toward the small human who stood before them. Tiho felt very small, very alone, very human. Yuna stood beside him, her translator device hanging from her neck. She had finally been allowed to join him after Captain Park convinced the Valen that every accused person deserved a witness. Her presence made Tiho feel slightly better, though not much. "They all look angry," Tiho whispered. "They all look scared," Yuna corrected. "There is a difference." The chamber fell silent as an ancient Valen rose from the highest seat. His skin was almost gray, wrinkled with age, and his eyes glowed with a deep purple light that suggested power beyond ordinary beings. "I am High Elder Quan," he announced, his voice echoing through the crystal chamber. "This council has gathered to discuss the matter of the human intruder and the terrible truths his presence has revealed." Tiho wanted to protest that he was not an intruder, just someone who had followed bad directions. But Yuna touched his arm gently, warning him to stay silent. "We have verified the claims of the scientists," Elder Quan continued. "All humans possess the sacred warmth. This species, which we believe to be primitive and cold-blooded, carries the mark of divinity in every single member of their race." Murmurs spread through the council. Some voices sounded angry, others sounded afraid. A few sounded almost excited. "This presents us with a crisis of faith," Quan said. "For 10,000 years, we have believed that warmth was the gift of the gods, given only to the chosen few. Now we learn that an entire species possesses this gift. What does this mean for our beliefs? What does it mean for our civilization?" A younger Valen rose from her seat. Her silver skin was polished to a bright shine, and she wore robes of dark red that marked her as someone important. "The answer is obvious," she declared. "Humans are false gods. They have somehow stolen the sacred warmth through unnatural means. They are an abomination that must be destroyed before they can corrupt our empire." "Destroyed?" Yuna stepped forward, anger flashing in her eyes. "You want to declare war on an entire species because of biology?" "You will be silent, Cold One," the Valen woman snapped. "You have no standing in this council." "She has every standing." Princess Lyra's voice rang out across the chamber. She descended from the seats above, her robes flowing behind her like water. "She speaks for the accused, as is proper under Valen law, or have we abandoned law along with reason?" The council members shifted uncomfortably. The woman in red sat down slowly, her face tight with anger. Lyra walked to the center of the chamber and stood beside Tiho and Yuna. "I have spoken with this human. I have touched his hand and felt his warmth. He is not an abomination. He is not a thief of divine gifts. He is simply a person who was born differently than we were." "He violated your sacred privacy," another council member called out. "He saw you unclothed. This is a crime punishable by death." "It was an accident," Lyra replied calmly. "The ship's computer led him to my chambers. We have examined the records and found that someone on our side opened the door for him." This caused a stir in the council. Elder Quan raised his hand for silence. "Are you suggesting sabotage?" he asked. "I am suggesting that someone wanted this encounter to happen," Lyra said. "Someone wanted humans and Valen to collide in exactly this way. Perhaps someone who wanted to cause chaos. Perhaps someone who wanted to test how we would react." The council members looked at each other with suspicion. In a culture built on hierarchy and tradition, the idea of sabotage was almost as disturbing as the idea of warm-blooded aliens. "Even if this is true," Quan said slowly, "it does not address the larger problem. How do we respond to the existence of humans? How do we explain them to our people?" "May I speak?" Tiho asked. Everyone turned to look at him. Yuna squeezed his arm again, but this time it seemed like encouragement rather than warning. "You may," Quan said after a long pause. Tiho cleared his throat. His voice felt tiny in the massive chamber, but he pressed on anyway. "I do not understand all of your customs and beliefs. I am just an engineer. I fix broken machines and sometimes help people with simple problems. But I do understand one thing. Being warm-blooded does not make you special on my world." He looked around at the silver faces watching him. "On Earth, we have billions of people. All of them are warm-blooded. And we are still cruel to each other. We still make mistakes. We still hurt the people we love and fail to help the people we should. Our warmth does not make us gods. It does not even make us particularly good." He took a deep breath. "Whatever your warmth means to you, whatever your royalty represents, that is yours. We do not want to take it away. We do not want to change your culture or tell you that your beliefs are wrong. We just want to exist. We want to explore the galaxy and meet new species and learn new things. We are not here to replace your gods. We are just here to be friends if you will let us." The chamber was silent. Tio felt his heart pounding in his chest, that warm human heart that apparently meant so much to these cold-skinned aliens. Then Elder Quan did something unexpected. He laughed. It was a dry, old sound, but it was genuine. "Friends," he repeated. "A species of gods wants to be our friends." "We are not gods," Tiho said firmly. "Please stop calling us that. It makes me uncomfortable." Quan laughed again. "Your discomfort may be the most convincing proof of your sincerity. Very well. There is one more test that must be performed before this council can make its decision." He gestured to a guard who brought forward a small pedestal. On top of it sat a flame, blue and cold and somehow solid, like fire frozen in time. "This is the sacred flame," Quan explained. "It burns all who are not truly warm-blooded. If you are what you claim to be, human, then you will be able to hold it without harm." "And if I cannot?" Tiho asked. "Then you will die, and we will know that humans have somehow deceived us." Yuna grabbed his arm. "Tiho, do not do this. We do not know what that thing is." But Tiho was looking at the flame, thinking about everything that had happened since he walked through the wrong door. He thought about Princess Lyra, who had shown him kindness when she could have shown anger. He thought about his mission, which was supposed to be about fixing machines, but had become about something much bigger. He thought about Earth, and all the people there who would never know that their fate was being decided in this crystal chamber. "I will do it," he said. He stepped forward before anyone could stop him. The guard backed away, and Tiho stood alone before the pedestal. The sacred flame was cold to look at but called to him somehow. It flickered and danced, waiting. Tiho reached out and picked it up. Pain exploded through his hand, sharp and hot and terrible. He almost dropped the flame, almost screamed. But then something changed. The pain faded. The flame grew warmer in his grip, shifting from blue to orange to a deep, comforting red. He held it up for the council to see. The chamber erupted. Some Valen were shouting. Others were kneeling. A few were trying to leave, pushing past their neighbors in their rush to escape. Elder Quan stared at Tiho with something like wonder in his ancient eyes. "It has been 3,000 years since the sacred flame changed color," he whispered. "Not since the first queen herself held it in her hands." Princess Lyra walked to Tiho's side. What does this mean for the council's decision? Quan was quiet for a long moment. Then he bowed his head, a gesture Tiho now recognized as one of deep respect. It means we cannot destroy them, Quan said. It means we cannot worship them. It means we must find a third path, one that no Valen has ever walked before. He raised his voice so the entire chamber could hear. This council will recommend alliance with humanity, not as gods or servants, but as equals. Let this moment mark the beginning of a new era for our people. The vote was taken. It was close, but the measure passed. Humanity and the Valen Empire would become allies. And Tiho, still holding the sacred flame, allowed himself to finally breathe. Later, Commander Vorin approached him in the hallway outside the chamber. The tall Valen soldier looked different now, less hostile, almost curious. Your bravery was remarkable, Vorin said. You had no way of knowing the flame would not kill you. Tiho shrugged, placing the now dim flame back in its container. I just did not want to make things worse. Sometimes you have to take a chance. Vorin nodded slowly. Perhaps I misjudged your kind. Perhaps we all misjudge each other, Tiho replied, until we stop and actually talk. For the first time since they had met, Commander Vorin smiled. It was not a large smile, but it was a start. 3 months had passed since Tiho walked through the wrong door and changed the course of galactic history. He still found it hard to believe, even now, standing on the observation deck of the horizon's edge as it orbited Earth. Princess Lyra stood beside him, watching the blue planet turn slowly below. This was her first visit to the human homeworld, and she had been unusually quiet for the past hour. What are you thinking? Tiho asked. I am thinking that your world is very blue, Lyra said softly, and very alive. I can see the heat rising from its surface even from here. Your whole planet glows with warmth. That is mostly the sun, Tiho said, and the atmosphere. We are not actually generating all of that ourselves. Lyra smiled. She did that more often now, smiled at his jokes, laughed at his explanations of human customs, shook her head at the strange things he considered normal. You are always trying to make yourself smaller, she observed, always trying to explain away what makes you special. I am not trying to be small, I am just being accurate. Perhaps, but accuracy is not everything. Sometimes wonder is more important than precision. Tiho thought about this as he watched his homeworld spin. She had a point. He had spent so much time explaining that humans were ordinary that he had almost forgotten to appreciate the extraordinary things they did every day. A shuttle was waiting to take them to the surface. Tiho had been assigned as Lyra's cultural liaison, a job title that mostly meant he walked around with her and explained why humans did the strange things they did. He had tried to refuse the position at first. I am just an engineer, he had told Captain Park. There must be someone more qualified. That is exactly why you should do it, Yuna had said, appearing behind him with a stack of data pads. The princess specifically asked for you. She trusts you. And honestly, after everything that happened, you understand the situation better than any diplomat would. So here he was, preparing to show an alien princess around Earth. His mother was going to meet them for dinner. His sister had already sent 15 messages asking if the princess was single. The shuttle landed in Seoul on a bright spring morning. Cherry blossoms were falling from the trees, pink and white petals drifting through the air like living snow. Lyra stepped out of the shuttle and stopped immediately, her purple eyes wide. What is happening? She asked. Why is the air full of flowers? They fall from the trees this time of year, Tiho explained. It is called spring. The trees are celebrating new life. Lyra reached out and caught a petal in her silver hand. This is beautiful, she whispered. We do not have anything like this on Valen Prime. Our plants are hard and practical. They do not waste energy on beauty. Humans waste a lot of energy on beauty, Tiho said. We consider it worthwhile. They walked through the city together, surrounded by guards from both species who tried very hard to look invisible. People stopped and stared. Some took photographs. A few brave children ran up to ask if Lyra was a fairy. "What is a fairy?" she asked Tiho after the third child had been gently led away by embarrassed parents. "A magical creature from our stories. They have silver skin and special powers and live in secret places." Lyra looked down at her silver hands. "Am I a fairy then?" "To them maybe, to me you are just Lyra." She smiled at that, a real, warm smile that Tiho was starting to recognize as genuine. "I think I prefer being just Lyra." They visited a market where Lyra tasted human food for the first time. She liked sweet things best, rice cakes and honey pastries, and something called chocolate that made her close her eyes in pleasure. "This is incredible," she said, holding a piece of chocolate like it was a precious gem. "How do you not eat this constantly?" "Some of us do," Tiho admitted. "It is not always good for us. Humans are strange. You have access to something perfect and you limit yourselves. We limit ourselves so we can enjoy it longer. Everything is better in moderation." Lyra considered this while eating another piece of chocolate. "I am not sure I agree." They visited a school where children drew pictures of spaceships and aliens and asked Lyra hundreds of questions about her home. They visited a hospital where Lyra watched humans caring for sick people, and she was surprised to see that warmth was given freely, without hierarchy or status. "On Valen, only the warm-blooded can be healers," she explained. "The cold-blooded are considered too distant to understand pain, but here anyone can care for anyone." "Everyone gets sick," Tiho said. "Everyone needs help sometimes. It does not matter who you are." By evening, they reached Tiho's family home, a modest apartment in a building that looked very ordinary compared to the crystal spires of Valen ships. His mother was waiting at the door, nervous and excited, wearing her best dress and holding a plate of freshly made food. "Welcome, welcome," she said in halting English, then in Korean, then in a confusing mix of both. "Please come in, please sit. Are you hungry?" Lyra looked at Tiho with something like panic in her eyes. This was not the formal diplomatic reception she had expected. "Just smile and accept the food," Tiho whispered. "Refusing would be an insult." Dinner was chaotic. Tiho's mother kept piling food on Lyra's plate. His father asked questions about Valen technology that Lyra struggled to answer in simple terms. His sister took approximately 100 photographs and asked at least 3 times if Lyra had any unmarried brothers. Through it all, Tiho watched Lyra adapt. She tried every dish, even the ones that made her face twist in confusion. She answered questions patiently, even when they were about things she considered private. She laughed at his father's bad jokes and complimented his mother's cooking. By the end of the meal, she looked exhausted but happy. "Your family is very loud," she said to Tiho as they walked on the small balcony outside, looking at the city lights below. "Yes, they are. And very welcoming. I have never felt so, included, even among my own people." Tiho leaned against the railing. "Humans are complicated. We fight and argue and sometimes hurt each other, but we also love deeply. We accept strangers into our homes and share our food with them. We are not perfect, but we try to be kind." Lyra was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I need to write my first report to the Valen Council about what I have learned here." "What will you say?" She thought carefully. "I will tell them that humans are not gods. They are not demons. They are not the saviors or the destroyers that some predicted." "Then what are we?" Lyra turned to face him, her silver skin glowing softly in the evening light. "You are people," she said. "Strange, complicated, beautiful people who refuse to see themselves as anything more than ordinary. And somehow that makes you extraordinary. You do not rule through fear or demand worship through power. You just live. You make food and tell jokes and argue about small things and then forgive each other. You face a universe that is vast and dangerous and cold, and you respond by generating warmth and sharing it with everyone you meet. She looked back at the city, at the millions of lights representing millions of lives. My people built an empire on the belief that warmth was sacred and rare. Humans have shown me that warmth can be everywhere. It can be in a mother's cooking, or a sister's bad jokes, or a stranger's willingness to catch a falling engineer who walked through the wrong door. Tiho laughed softly. You are never going to let me forget that, are you? Never, Lyra agreed. It will be in all the history books. The day the human engineer stumbled into the princess's bathroom and accidentally united two civilizations. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the earth turn beneath the stars. Somewhere in the galaxy, the Valen Council was debating how to adapt their ancient beliefs to new realities. Somewhere, scientists from both species were beginning to work together on technologies that would benefit everyone. Somewhere, children were dreaming of a future where humans and Valen explored the universe side by side. And here, on a small balcony in Seoul, a maintenance engineer and an alien princess had become friends. It was, Tiho thought, a good start. What happens now? He asked. Lyra smiled and took his hand. Her fingers were cool against his warm skin, but he did not mind. He was getting used to the difference. Now, she said, we keep walking through doors, even the wrong ones, especially the wrong ones, because you never know what you might find on the other side. Tiho squeezed her hand gently. He had started this journey as an exhausted engineer, following bad directions. He was ending it as something else entirely, a bridge between worlds, a symbol of ordinary humanity, and proof that sometimes the best discoveries come from the biggest mistakes. The stars continued to shine, the cherry blossoms continued to fall, and somewhere in the distance, a new chapter of galactic history was just beginning. All because of one wrong door.